Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing a good old-fashioned book recommendation video. Before we jump into the video, I do just want to say big, huge thank you to whoever has bought my Reading Passport book journal in the last couple of weeks. It's been so amazing to see people actually buying this, and I'm so incredibly grateful for all of the support around this book journal and just how lovely you have all been around it. This has just made me so happy because I'm so proud of this journal and I really love it. And it's also really got me like inspired to see what if I did a version 2 or if I did different versions of the journal. I'm already thinking of doing different colors, like how I could change it, and it's just been really exciting and so much fun. So thank you so much to everyone who's already bought one. And if you have bought one, if you don't mind, please could you leave me a review? It just really helps with if anyone else is searching a book journal for a Reading Around the World challenge. Reviews really help with like the Amazon algorithm as well. So I'd be very grateful for that. And if you don't know anything about this journal, then I will tag the video up here somewhere where I'm explaining all about it. The other thing I wanted to say before we get started is I have cut my hair recently and I don't know how I feel about it, so if you don't like it then don't tell me, because I don't know if I like it. So we're just working with it. I did it very much on a whim, and we're seeing how I feel. I know that I'll know how I feel when I see this video back. That's how I'll truly know how I feel about this hair. But no, I didn't go to a hairdresser. I've actually, fun fact about me, never been to a hairdresser in my entire life. And I don't think I ever will, except for that it means I do stuff like this to my hair. Anyway, let's just jump in with what we're actually here to talk about, which is book recommendations for winter. I'm talking winter in general, but also specifically like the week of Christmas or when you get that time off work. I had a few people asking me for recommendations to read books over winter, and I've got so many ideas. So these books are either really snowy, wintry themed, or they're really cozy, or they take place exactly over Christmas, or they're nostalgic in some way. Even if they're not nostalgic to you, like you've read it before, it will make you feel like Christmas made you feel when you were a young child. There's, as usual, a huge range of books here in different genres, so there'll be something for everyone. So let's just jump in with my winter/Christmas book recommendations. The first book that I want to talk about is one that I have most recently read, and I just read this and it got me feeling so ready for Christmas. And also it will not take you long at all, and it is Small Things Like These. A movie of this book has just recently come out and I've not yet seen that movie, but now I really want to. This book is by Claire Keegan and she writes very short, usually very lyrical, beautiful fiction. And she is an Irish writer, so they are all usually set in Ireland as well. And this book somehow manages to be so soft and kind of comforting, but also really intense at the same time. And this is basically set over a week around Christmas. So this is set in the 1980s in Ireland, and you're following a man who's a coal and timber merchant, and you're following him during this incredibly busy season around this cold winter as he is making deliveries around his community. This book really makes you feel like you are part of this community as well. And I don't want to tell you too much about the plot because, like I said, it's very short. It's about 100 pages, so it's something that is an amazing thing to discover for yourself. But as he's going around his community, there is something almost haunting this small community. It's not a ghost story in any way. I don't mean haunting in that way. I just mean there is something bubbling underneath the surface about this community, and it forces this main character to kind of make a choice between being complicit in a silence or kind of taking a stand. It's absolutely beautiful. I really loved it. The writing is just like hypnotic as well, the way that things are described. Highly recommend it for over the Christmas period, maybe on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve. If you've got like just like an hour or two to read a book, you could read this whole book within that time. But highly recommend all of Claire Keegan's books as well. This is my third book by her and I absolutely love them. If literary fiction isn't your thing and you prefer something a bit more intense or maybe a sci-fi, then boy do I have a recommendation for you. This is another one of my favourite books that I read last year, and it is The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. As you can see from this book, like the front cover, it is a wintry, icy book, because most of this book takes place on a very long, treacherous journey across this kind of like ice desert. So this book is a sci-fi book, but it's also a deeply philosophical and political book. Basically, in this story, you are following someone who is visiting a planet. He comes from kind of an intergalactic UN type system, and he is coming as an emissary to this planet to try and convince the people of the planet to join up with their like UN. So as you can imagine, this person is just like dropped in the deep end, and this planet's culture and biology and architecture and everything about this society is completely different to his own. So he is trying to kind of frantically figure out the rules of this place as well. And he gets caught up in a lot of other things that are going on in this planet as well. But at its core, this book is really about friendship and it's about love, and it's set on this backdrop that's almost like put up like a thought experiment about how these two different societies could interact, but then also what it says about humanity, about how these societies are set up and how these two people can kind of come together and take this really like treacherous journey. It's just absolutely incredible. I absolutely loved it. It was also one of those books that I just like read it and I was just sitting there afterwards just looking at the book like absolutely reeling. So I was like, I don't even know if I enjoyed that or if it was just like something that has changed me profoundly, but I can say I did definitely enjoy it. It's another one that I do really want to reread. An amazing wintry read, and I absolutely loved it. So that's Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. If sci-fi isn't your thing, or that sounds a little bit too intense and you want something that's more fantasy leaning, then may I suggest The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. This is set in a village at the very edge of like northern Russia, and in this place there are so many stories and folklore told about different creatures in the woods that live around the village, and especially about the Winter King. And in this book you're following Vasya, who has the ability to see spirits that other people cannot see, and she's warned many times about the dark magic that she could be interacting with, but she doesn't see anything wrong with these spirits until a visitor comes to the village, and then so much of their community is utterly disrupted. This is a really beautiful book, and if you like fairy tales, if you like folklore, if you like fantasy with a hint of darkness, then I would highly recommend this book for you. It's a slightly longer read. This is about like 450 pages. So it's something to really like dig your way into, and it's perfect for the winter season. The next book I want to recommend is actually a classic, and this is one that I read on Christmas Day, I think like last year or a couple of years ago, and I'm so glad that I did read it, and it is A Christmas Carol. If you've ever seen a movie adaptation of this book, I do really recommend going back and actually reading the original text. It will not take you very long. It's quite a short book, especially when we're talking about Charles Dickens, and for a long time it was my favourite Charles Dickens until I read David Copperfield this year. But there's just nothing more Christmassy than A Christmas Carol. Everyone watches this movie every year, so if you're trying to read more classics, then this is definitely a fun one to give a go. I don't think I need to describe what this one is about. I feel like everyone's familiar with this story already. I do also think it's fun actually reading the classic that has spawned so many different adaptations to see what's actually was in the original and what's been like added in different movies that we know and love. Next up, if translated fiction is more your type of thing, then I would highly recommend The Ice Palace by Taj Vasas. I'm so bad at pronunciation, but this is a Norwegian book. This is a Norwegian classic, but when was it originally published? It was published in 1963, and this is set in a small community in Norway over the course of a winter where a waterfall has basically completely frozen solid, and the children all call it the Ice Palace. This story is mainly following two young girls, Sis and Un, and they really couldn't be more unalike from each other. Un is very lonely and quiet and a little bit strange, whereas Sis is very like lively and charismatic, and they spend one day together and form a really special bond. So then when Un decides to go and explore the Ice Palace on her own, Sis is left behind and trying to figure out what happened to her new friend. The best way I can describe this book is that it is so quiet but so impactful. It feels as if you are yourself exploring a palace made of ice where you don't know what is around every corner, and it is so cold but also so magical. It's a sad book, but it is so impactful, and every time I think of winter reads, I think about this book. That is The Ice Palace. I also just absolutely adore this cover of this book. It's so beautiful. Next up, for a much cozier story, but also another classic. This is not technically a winter read, but something about it absolutely screams Christmas, and we do have a few scenes from Christmas in the book, and that is Little Women. If you've never read it, it might be a good time to read it over Christmas. This edition is absolutely so hefty for some reason, but it does have really cool illustrations inside. This is another one that's got a few amazing adaptations, especially recently, but I do really recommend going back and actually reading the novel itself as well, even just to see what they've changed and what's actually within the book, and see if it gives you another interpretation. So Little Women follows the lives of the 4 March sisters as they transition from childhood to adulthood, and it's a very domestic novel, and I don't say that in any disparaging way. I love it for the fact that it's a utterly domestic novel, and it concerns the lives of these children and these women. You go through their life with them as they're deciding what kind of life they want to live, and the ups and the downs and their dreams and hopes and wishes for the future. You get to know them so well by the end. It's just one of those books that's just really beautifully written, and also like unashamedly about women. It's funny at times, it's sad, it's poignant, and I just really love it. And it's a great classic to read over Christmas because of all of the really sweet, heartwarming domestic scenes and the Christmas scenes in this book as well. Another recommendation, if you like fairy tales and also classic books and also translated books, you could read The Snow Queen, which is a Danish fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen. This is another one of these books that is just adapted so many times that you don't actually know when you read the original. Like, it's just crazy to see how much has been changed from the original. This is a really short little fairy tale. It won't take you very long to read, but it's a very beautiful story all about friendship and good versus evil. And this book is all about Gerda and her friend Kai, and when Kai is stolen away by the Snow Queen, Gerda goes off and tries to find him to help him. It's one of those fairy tales that just has parts of it that you are just like, what is going on here? Like, what is actually happening? But that is quite fun to read. Also, if you like Frozen, this was originally the basis of Frozen. It's like entirely different. It's kind of fun to read the original. Next up, if you like fantasy, then you should read Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. I absolutely love all of Naomi Novik's books at this point. I've read most of her books except for one of her main series, and I really love all of them. This one is the most wintry themed because it is set in a place that has been plagued by really long, brutal winters, and in this book you're following 3 different girls or young women. First, you're following Miriam, who is a moneylender's daughter, and she one day brags that she can turn silver into gold. But unfortunately, some of the ancient fae creatures that live around her village hear her, and they want to steal her away to be able to turn their silver into gold. You're also following Wanda, who is a poor village girl, and you're also following the daughter of a duke. And all of their lives intersect in really interesting ways, and I just really love this story. It's kind of loosely based on Rumpelstiltskin, but it is completely of its own as well. It's this really magical story. It is touched with romance, I would say, and it's also got some darkness in there as well. This is another one that's really steeped in mythology and folklore as well, but also just like such a chilly read. Perfect to read over Christmas. Next up, I have 2 more recommendations, but they are more author recommendations rather than specific books. The first that I want to talk about is Terry Pratchett's Discworld. So there is actually a book that is all about Christmas within Discworld that is called The Hogfather, but I haven't actually read that one. I might choose to read that one over Christmas as well. But basically, Terry Pratchett writes books within the Discworld world, and something about them just absolutely screams Christmas and cozy to me. These are fantasy books. They are very transportive, but also they are just so funny and strange and weird. They're like satires of themselves as well. They follow different sets of characters or themes within the different books. I'm actually reading them chronologically, and that's been very fun to do. So I've read the first 7. I only have 6 here for some reason. I don't know where the other one has gone because I definitely read it physically. But just something about these books in particular is so Christmassy to me, so much fun. If you've been meaning to pick up a Discworld book, I'd really recommend picking one up over Christmas. Maybe pick up the Hogfather one, and then we can read it together and see what we think. Yeah, that is my author recommendation for you. And then my second author recommendation is Agatha Christie. So I have a few here from Agatha Christie. I've read a lot of Agatha Christie. Me and my friend Alice, we read all of the Miss Marples together and they are so much fun. But I'd recommend Miss Marple or Poirot mysteries. Something about them are so Christmassy to me. I think because these are all my mum's books and I read one over Christmas and steal the book. But I do find it like a very Christmassy thing to read, like these like cozy murder mysteries. And you just cannot get better. If that's what you like, cozy murder mysteries, you cannot get better than the original Agatha Christie. Every other murder mystery that I've tried to read is just a cheap imitation, honestly. The ones that I've got here are Crooked House, which I really liked. They Do It With Mirrors, which I've forgotten. The Murder at the Vicarage, which was also very fun. And then Nemesis, which I don't think I liked as much. I feel like some of them are set around Christmas time as well. You can definitely find some that are set around Christmas. But they usually have just so many twists and turns. Also just like very hilarious characters. And like whoever you're following, whether it's you're following Miss Marple, who's a little old lady, or whether you're following Poirot, whichever investigator you kind of choose, they just have so much character about them. So that is my other author recommendation for Christmas time reading. And I think that's actually it for me today. They're all the recommendations I have for Christmas/winter reading. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please leave a comment if you have any recommendations for me to read over Christmas. Although I have just like very impulsively decided to do a complete reread of The Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. So if you just recently saw my TBR video for December, just scrap that because I'm not going to be doing it. I have not started this reread yet. I decided when Wind and Truth came out, I was about to start it and I just thought, you know what will make this better? Is if I read 4 other 1,000-page plus books just before reading this. So now I've committed to doing that, so I'm going to start from the beginning of there and probably be reading those all over Christmas because I also love reading long epic fantasies over Christmas. But let me know what you're planning to read or if you've read any of these and you agree with me that they're very Christmassy reads. But that's all from me today. Thank you so much for watching this video and I will talk to you again soon. Bye!